Do you remember feeling that discrimination often when you're a child? You look at it very differently, though, isn't it? When you grow up.
Yeah, as a very young child, I think the funny story I have is that, I was with my friends playing, and whenever a white person would go from Oroville, there'd be white people going past our village. So we'd be like, and the Vellakaru Paka, and the Vellakaru Paka, which means look at that white person going past. Look at that. Look at how you stare at foreigners. So I was doing that, and I didn't. The concept was not there that I was one of those. So that was the example. But later, I guess, like when I was 15, 14, I remember going to Kovalam beach in Kerala with my friends for a holiday. And all my friends were Indian. And I was the one that the drug dealer approached. I was the one that some random guy would hit on. So there was this kind of like image that I would be easier to approach because of the fact that I'm not from here, that I don't understand the codes here. And things like that. Similarly, when I've gone abroad and I've, studied in London, there, the codes that I'm Indian didn't make sense, right? Because I looked white. So, when I said I'm from India, they're like, yeah, sure. Like Madonna is from India or Uma Thurman is from India. So, the codes were not there. I think I remember that moment when one of my English friends realized I was Indian. Okay, I was in the dormitories in my university, and we all each had our own room with like a little cubicle toilet. And she was hanging out in my room, and she said, "Can I use your loo?" I said, "Yeah, go." She went, and she said, "Oh, there's no toilet paper." So I said, "Yeah, but there's a little cup you can use." And she was like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, I don't keep toilet paper. I use the cup." And that it really hit her then. Yeah. She was like, she's like, "Why?" I was like, "Because that's how we do it in India. We have a bum spray, And I just don't ever use toilet paper." And she couldn't, like, the concept had to come from that,
Can't get more Indian than that. Carrying bidets everywhere we go.
This is like a priority. And I also am shocked that some, I won't name hotels, 5-star hotels in our country, representing India.
Don't have it. You mentioned that, and I wanted to talk about the importance that your parents also put on getting educated. And I think that your experience in London with theatre and everything obviously formed the foundation of you being an actor. And that must have really helped. A lot of people who don't know that you've studied and, you've really studied the art, you've practiced it, you're a playwright and all of that, which I think, like a lot of actors say, nothing like doing theatre and teaching you about acting. So what are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are, honestly, when it comes to acting, nothing like experience and working on the ground to learn about acting. The formal education of acting, in fact, I didn't even go to an acting school. I went to I did a BA in drama and theatre studies, which one part of it was acting, but a lot of it was like set direction, set designing, direction, the history of theatre, different forms of theatre from around the world. So it was a very academic course. But what it did do, going abroad, fending for myself, getting a job as a waitress, paying my own way through, just living life, having boyfriends, sorting out, my life on my terms, and not having your parents as support financially and emotionally, being in a strange country during Diwali and not having anyone to celebrate with. These are things which kind of, do something to you as a person. They bring a little metal into you, which I think is important for people to just be away from home to do, because I don't know, it helps you when you are tested, when you're in an industry where they're like, "Oh, you don't look good like this, you need to do this," or and you feel the pressure to change yourself for an industry. And I think because you've already lived that test somewhere on your own terms, you're less likely to just adjust, when you go into the industry. So I think that gave me a very strong foundation to be able to be like, okay, but if I don't make it here, it's okay. I have done it before. I've done other things, and I can do other things.
100%. We always talk about the stereotypical idea of heroines in the the Hindi film industry, and how we look at beauty and all of that. As a woman growing up in India or any other country, also, I think the kind of pressures that are put on women are kind of different from the other genders, and because there is again this certain standard of beauty that everybody wants to, whether it's certain kind of skin, whether it's certain kind of nose, or it's also the way you look. Are you thin, are you fat, or are you everything is throughout your journey as growing up. When you look at everybody around you, it's extremely daunting. How were you battling that as somebody who was growing up, if you did? And then I think post the industry, it's a different ball game again, right?
Yeah. So teenagers, especially teenage years, I'm just so thankful to God that there was no social media. Because when I think about social media and what kids are exposed to today in terms of this, especially girls, I mean, there's literally now papers that have proven that girls are much more affected by depression, much more likely to commit suicide because of these issues of being commented on, trolled on for the way they look. And I remember as a teenager having these like train tracks braces, huge, with the elastic bands. And I wasn't very good looking as a 13-year-old. I was awkward as hell, lanky and just not comfortable in my body and stuff. Probably didn't know much about waxing and all these things at that time. So if I had been exposed, like if I had put a picture up on my social media, which is what kids of that age are doing now, and I would have been trolled, I'm sure, and it would have really affected my confidence and my self-esteem. So I'm grateful I didn't have that, and I was kind of in this like isolated Nilgiri small school, very old school. Then didn't have too much exposure even to something like a branding, because 90s, I think that's when we started opening up as a country to global branding, Nike and stuff like that. But it's nothing compared to what like the West was already, doing, and the way that you dressed. Whereas we were in a uniform and we didn't have like trendy things that we had to carry or trendy things that we had to wear. It just wasn't part of our lives. So I'm lucky to have had that. I had this sort of time in my life which changed me in terms of, growing up from a young girl to an adulthood. And that time, was with London, with being away from home, with not having anybody around me. But, it came with both sides of it, where I was really excited to just be liberated, to meet boys, to, go out, to dress up, to feel like a beautiful young girl. And there was the other side, which comes with the responsibility of that, the heartbreaks, the not knowing who you are, the self-search, what do you want out of life? So all of that was a tough time, I think, for me.
Do you feel like that helped you in not being, or maybe the word is less secure, like less insecure, when you were entering the industry, which is again Hindi film industry particularly, right? And their idea of beauty and how heroines should be. Do you think it helped you that you already lived through those experiences and you were still your own person?
To a certain degree, yes. But I do remember very distinctly having periods in my life early on in my career, especially after Dev Diya or so, like after my first film, where I felt so scrutinized for the way I looked that I felt ugly, that I would look in the mirror and I know I wasn't ugly. Now, when I look back, I'm like, I was in my prime. I looked so good. Why didn't I enjoy it?
Absolutely.
But there were times where I was looking at myself and I was like, feeling so ugly from just the fact that somebody, said, some comment about my teeth, or said some, like, how can you be an actor, and all this kind of stuff that people just say on social media. Or that, this was also just after, I think just at the time where like social media, when did that come? Around
the time
2013? Maybe it was a little later. It wasn't, Devi was earlier.
People
but
around
I don't know
generally.
how. But no, there were comments like this on Twitter, I remember.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a bit later than Devi.
Sure. Yeah, it was.
I remember those really affecting the way I looked at myself. So, I don't think any amount of exposure, confidence, like sexual liberation can protect you from the fact that, you know, people have a protected identity and can say anything they want on social media.